Imagine a massive line graph, right?
Okay.
And it shows South Korea's GDP just absolutely skyrocketing between, say, 1975 and 2001.
Right, the classic economic miracle.
Exactly. Now, I want you to imagine taking a giant red question mark and just stamping it right over the bustling, neon-lit streets of Seoul.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Because, look, if you were to ask almost anyone in the late 90s, they'd say all those international tourists buying up cosmetics in Yeongdong, staying in those luxury suites, they were the engine of that miracle.
Yeah, that was the absolute global consensus.
Right. The whole world assumes that building up tourism is just this guaranteed engine for economic growth.
It's treated like a universal law.
But today, we're taking a sledgehammer to that assumption. Welcome to the deep dive. We are looking at data from South Korea that will literally make any city planner or policymaker break out in a cold sweat.
It really is a brutal anti-common sense reality when you actually look at the math.
Oh, completely.
Because under the shadow of the miracle on the Han River, everyone firmly believed those international tourists were bringing in this hard economic boosting cash.
Sure.
But the data we are going to look at today reveals that we might have had the cause and effect entirely backwards.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want to drop a number right out of the gate that just sort of highlights the stakes here.
Go for it.
In 1998, international tourism accounted for a mere 3.5% of South Korea's GDP.
Right. Just 3.5%.
Which is shockingly low. I mean, our intuition tells us that with packed airports and huge resorts, it has to be this massive pillar of wealth.
Yeah, visually it feels like a huge chunk of the economy.
But if it's only 3.5%, the idea that tourism was the primary catalyst pulling the whole country's massive industrial GDP forward, it starts to look mathematically impossible.
Exactly. And that contradiction is what brings us to the core of today's deep dive. We are focusing on a single, highly disruptive paper from 2005.
Yes, from Cheok,
Yeah.
out of Texas A&M University.
Right. It's titled, The Contribution of Tourism Development to Economic Growth in the Korean Economy.
Catchy title.
Well, academics.
Yeah.
But the reason this paper is so brilliant is the sheer scale of the operation he ran.
Yeah, he didn't mess around.
Not at all. He didn't just look at a few random years. Well, it took a scalpel to 26 years of continuous quarterly economic data.
That's from the first quarter of 1975 all the way to the first quarter of 2001.
Yep. Just to test this one,
Yeah.
prideful national strategy. He wanted to answer that painful question. Did tourism actually pull the economy forward? Or did the booming economy just, accidentally drag tourism along for the ride?
Which is such a wild concept, but to understand how this assumption gets busted so hard, we kind of need to look at the massive pile of global cash that blinded everyone in the first place, right?
Oh, absolutely. The temptation was enormous.
Like, let's put ourselves in the global context of the year 2001.
Okay.
There were roughly 693 million tourists traveling the globe that year, and they were generating $462 billion. That is roughly $1.3 billion flowing across borders every single day.
And when you have that much cash moving around, tourism universally gets seen as this perfect alternative export.
Wait, alternative export. I love that phrasing. Explain that for a second.
Well, normally to export something, you have to build a physical product, load it onto a cargo ship, deal with global tariffs, and compete in foreign markets.
Sounds expensive.
Very.
Yeah.
But with tourism, you just convince the foreign consumer to buy a plane ticket, fly to your country, and literally hand you their foreign currency.
It's like an infinite money glitch.
It really feels like one. It brings in immediate foreign exchange, and it drastically improves a country's balance of payments.
And the Korean government in the late 1980s knew this, right? Like, they were hyper aware of this mechanism.
Oh, they were obsessed with it. In fact, they strictly controlled outbound travel for their own citizens during that era.
Wait, they wouldn't let their own people go on vacation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to hoard every single cent of foreign exchange to fund their industrial growth. They didn't want Korean currency leaking out to other countries.
That is wild.
And their strategy worked incredibly well. By the late 1990s, tourism earnings accounted for 1 out of every $5 in their entire trade balance.
It's 20%.
Right, 20%.
Okay, so let me push back here. If I'm listening to this and I'm a city planner and you tell me tourism is 20% of my foreign trade balance, I am popping champagne.
Naturally.
I mean, it sounds like a pillar industry. It feels like if I build a massive theme park, it's just guaranteed revenue. So who are they actually serving if this doesn't create long-term growth?
And that right there is the trap. You are falling for the multiplier myth.
The multiplier myth. Okay, break that down for me.
So the traditional loop that gets sold to politicians goes like this. Tourism grows, right?
Right.
Which means tourists spend money, so local income increases.
Makes sense.
Because income increases, the government gets more tax revenue. And then the government spends that on infrastructure, so the whole economy grows.
It sounds like a perfect self-sustaining circle.
It does, but what's fascinating here is that this logic has a fatal flaw.
Which is?
It assumes the relationship is a two-way street, but it actually can't prove it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, Korea's massive export-oriented manufacturing boom was happening at the exact same time. And that industrial boom was actually hiding the true source of the power.
Right, because if two things are going up at the same time, we just naturally assume they're holding hands.
Exactly. It's a huge logical fallacy.
So how did O actually prove this? Like, how did he prep this data for surgery to expose that flaw?
He had to strip the data of all its illusions. He isolated two core variables: real aggregate tourism receipts.
We'll just call that tour.
Good. And real gross domestic product, or GDP.
Okay, tour and GDP.
But you can't just look at raw dollars from 1975 and compare them to 2001.
Right, because $1 in 1975 buys you a lot more than $1 in 2001, inflation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So use the consumer price index to remove the noise of inflation.
Makes sense.
But, and this is crucial, he kept the raw seasonal quarterly data intact. He didn't smooth it out into yearly averages.
Why is that so important?
Because if you average things out over a whole year, you lose the pulse of the market. You lose the immediate chaotic reactions to economic shocks.
Yeah, right. If a crisis hits in October, an annual average just smears that drop across the whole year.
Precisely. So we have quarterly data adjusted for inflation. Then he used natural logarithms.
Okay, hold on. Natural logarithms. Whenever we bring up calculus, people get nervous. So let me translate this for you guys listening.
Please do.
By using logarithms, we aren't just looking at raw absolute dollars anymore. We are looking at elasticity.
Right.
Basically, if one thing twitches by exactly 1%, how hard does the other thing jump in response? We are measuring the relative tension between the two.
That's a perfect way to put it. It levels the playing field so you can compare massive numbers with smaller numbers accurately.
Okay, so the data is prepped. It's stripped of inflation, it's logarithmically scaled, and it's pulsing quarter by quarter.
Yes, but before O could even test if A caused B, he had to build a first line of defense.
Right, to make sure A and B weren't just randomly moving in the same direction by total coincidence.
Exactly. And this introduces a major pitfall in economic research: the lie of stationarity.
Stationarity. This is where it gets really interesting, folks.
Because most studies actually fail on step one here. They see two things going up over time, and they instantly declare a causal relationship.
Okay, I have an analogy for this that I love. Let me run this by you.
Let's hear it.
Imagine you are walking your dog up a very long, very steep hill.
Okay.
And across the street, a total stranger is also walking up the same steep hill.
Right.
Now, if I'm a lazy statistician and I just track your elevations, my data shows you two are perfectly coordinated. You are rising at the exact same rate.
The math would say you are completely in sync.
Exactly. I'd write a paper saying the stranger is clearly pulling you up the hill, but really you just happen to both be climbing a hill at the same time.
That is exactly what happens with macroeconomic data. Time is the hill.
Right. As populations grow and technology gets better, GDP naturally goes up. And as air travel gets cheaper, tourism naturally goes up.
So, he had to mathematically flatten the hill. He had to stop the upward drift to see if the dog was actually pulling you or if you were pulling the dog.
And that is such a trap. How did he flatten the hill mathematically?
He ran the data through three incredibly intense statistical checkpoints: the Dickey-Fuller test, the augmented Dickey-Fuller test, and the Phillips-Perron test.
Okay, without getting bogged down in the formulas, what do these tests actually do?
They basically look at the data and ask, is today's number just yesterday's number plus a little bit of random noise?
And if it is?
If it is, the data has what we call a unit root. It's non-stationary. It means it just wanders upward forever, carrying all his past noise with it.
Which means it's on the escalator.
Exactly. And the results. In their raw form, Both GDP and tourism failed the tests. They were totally non-stationary.
Wow. So any correlation you see on the surface is just a complete fake out.
A total statistical mirage. So to fix this, Ola had to take what's called the first difference.
Which means what, practically?
It means instead of looking at the total GDP for the quarter, you only look at the change from the previous quarter. You subtract yesterday from today.
Oh, I get it. It's like looking at the speedometer instead of the odometer.
Exactly. You only care about the acceleration, not the total distance traveled.
That makes so much sense.
And once he did that, once he took the first difference, the data finally stabilized. Both variables became what economists call an I-1 process. They became stationary.
Okay, so the hill is mathematically flattened, the fake correlations are gone.
Right.
Which means now we can ask the ultimate question. Are tourism and the economy actually married in the long run?
Yes. Now that the data is honest, we can run the co-integration test.
Co-integration. Explain this one.
I'll use the Ingle-Granger two-stage approach. This tests for a long-run equilibrium. Basically, a force that keeps two variables together over time, despite short-term chaos.
Okay, think of it like an invisible bungee cord, right?
Exactly. Tourism and GDP might wander apart for a few months, but if they're co-integrated, that bungee cord will eventually snap taut and pull them back onto the same path.
So the whole tourism is the engine theory completely relies on this bungee cord existing.
It absolutely depends on it.
Okay, so O goes looking for the bungee cord in the data. What were the actual hard numbers?
To prove the cord exists, the Dickey-Filler test needed to cross a critical threshold of negative 3.37.
Negative 3.37. Did they hit it?
No. The standard test yielded a negative 2.46, and the augmented test gave negative 2.53.
Wow, they completely failed.
They didn't even come close. The null hypothesis, which is the assumption that there's no relationship, was not rejected.
So what is the brutal truth here?
The brutal truth is that there is absolutely no long-term marriage between South Korea's tourism receipts and its GDP.
That is incredibly anti-common sense. I mean, from a distance, looking at the city of Seoul, they look like they are dancing together perfectly.
Dead, for they aren't dancing. They are just two parallel lines. They might briefly intersect during a short-term shock, but then they just drift off in totally different directions over the long run.
Meaning tourism prosperity simply does not guarantee sustained economic growth. You can build all the resorts you want, and it won't fundamentally raise your long-term GDP.
Exactly. The long-term contract is non-existent.
Okay, but what about the short term? I mean, if they don't have a long-term marriage, do they at least react to each other month to month?
That was the next step.
Oh, how to figure out the lag.
The lag, right.
Yeah.
Because economic shifts don't happen via magic teleportation.
Exactly. If the government announces a massive new economic initiative today, they aren't going to see the impact tomorrow morning.
Right. It takes time to hire people, build factories, for that money to circulate.
So I had to find out.
Yeah.
Exactly how long does it take for a change in the overall economy to be felt in the tourism sector? And how did he figure that out without just guessing?
He used a VAR model, a vector autoregression model.
Sounds heavy.
It's actually a very unbiased tool because they don't know who's tourism leading GDP or is GDP leading tourism. The VAR model puts both of them in an interrogation room and treats them as equal suspects.
I love that. No preconceived biases.
Right. It lets them both try to predict each other simultaneously. But to set up the interrogation, Ozzie needed to know how far back in time to look.
The length of the delay.
Right. So he used three rigorous statistical criteria. The Akaike information criteria, the Schwartz-Bayesian criteria, and the likelihood ratio test.
The AIC, SBC, and LR.
Yep. And you know what's amazing? All three of these incredibly complex tests agreed on the exact same number.
What was the undisputed winner?
A lag of exactly 5 quarters.
5 quarters. Okay, let me translate this into a real-world punchline for everyone listening.
Please.
5 quarters is 15 months. This means economic reality has a massive incubation period. If a government rolls out a huge policy today, they won't see the true impact on international tourism data until a full year and a quarter later.
Exactly.
Think about how dangerous that is for politicians. You could enact a terrible economic policy and your tourism numbers might still look great for another 14 months before the floor falls out.
It's a massive blind spot. Tourism is a lagging indicator, not a real-time dashboard.
Okay, so we have our 15-month delay. The data is clean, the escalators are stopped, it is time for the judgment moment. Who is actually the real king here?
This is the ultimate showdown, the Granger causality test.
The Granger test. Who is actually pulling the strings? Let's get to the reversal of expectations.
Right. So O takes the Granger causality test to see if knowing the history of one variable helps predict the other.
Basically asking, does suspect A cause suspect B?
Exactly. So first, he tests the tourism-led growth hypothesis. Did tourism cause GDP growth?
The multi-billion-dollar question. What did the data say?
The p-value for that test was a weak 0.3124.
Oof. For anyone who doesn't do statistics, a p-value that high basically means it's garbage, right?
Yeah, it means it's not statistically significant at all. There's over a 31% chance it's just random noise. The data definitively said, no, tourism does not cause GDP growth.
The assumption is shattered.
Completely. But then he flips the script. He asks, did GDP cause tourism?
Okay, moment of truth.
The F statistic was a massive 6.2762, and the p-value was a microscopic 0.00002.
0.00002, so there's only a 2 in 10,000 chance that's a coincidence.
It's an undeniable mathematical slam dunk. This raises an important question, or rather, it answers one. The economic prosperity was giving charity to the tourism sector.
Giving charity. Wow, not the other way around.
Not at all.
And I want to hit the listener with some hard numbers here because this is what I call the 0.19% humiliation.
It is pretty humiliating for the tourism narrative.
Because even if South Korea's massive heavy industrial economy worked its absolute hardest and grew by a staggering 1%,
it only managed to drag the tourism sector up by a mathematically pathetic 0.153%.
which rounds to roughly 0.19%.
Right.
So a 1% boom in the entire national engine only causes a fraction of a percent twitch in tourism.
Exactly. Tourism is exposed here as a purely passive follower.
Yeah.
It's a mere byproduct of the country's actual industrial success.
It's just riding in the sidecar.
And barely holding on.
Okay, but wait, hang on a second. If this is definitively proven for Korea, why does the rest of the world still think tourism is the golden goose?
That's a very fair question.
Because you look at Europe or the Caribbean, and they literally bet their whole nations on it.
Right. And Chiok Oh actually addresses this in the paper. He brings in another study by Balaguer and Kentavella-Jorda.
Okay, and what did they look at?
They looked at Spain. And they proved that in Spain, tourism does drive long-term economic growth.
Wait, really? So the multiplier myth isn't a myth there?
In Spain, it's very real.
Why? Why does it work in Madrid but fail in Seoul?
It comes down to scale and economic DNA. In Spain, tourism accounts for a massive 5.9% of their total GDP. They are structurally built for it. It's their primary export. But Korea, at 3.5%, it's just too small a lever to move the massive rock of their economy.
Because Korea's DNA is export-oriented manufacturing, building cars and ships.
Exactly.
So trying to prescribe the Madrid medicine to Seoul is basically giving them a placebo.
It's a complete misdiagnosis of the patient.
That makes sense. But wait, this brings up a huge question. If the manufacturing economy is what's pulling tourism up in Korea, who exactly are all these tourists?
Oh.
Because if millions of people aren't flying to Seoul just to go sightseeing, why are the tourism receipts skyrocketing alongside the GDP?
This is one of my favorite parts. It's what we can call the business travel mirage.
The business travel mirage. Okay, explain this illusion.
As Korea's factories and tech conglomerates boomed in the 80s and 90s, they became the center of global trade networks.
Right. Samsung, Hyundai, LG.
Exactly. And who flies to the center of a global trade network?
Executives, supply chain managers, corporate buyers.
Yes. International executives fly in. They stay in five-star hotels. They spend lavishly at high-end restaurants on corporate expense accounts.
Oh, wow. And on the national spreadsheet.
On the national balance of payments, all that spending is categorized under international tourism receipts.
That is wild. So the tourism boom was really just a manufacturing boom wearing a tailored suit and a briefcase?
Precisely. The heavy industry was pulling the business travelers across the border.
But wait, doesn't that still help the local economy? They are still spending money in hotels.
It does, in the short term.
Mm-hmm.
But it creates a fragile, broken loop.
How is it broken?
Think about it. The business tourist spends $10,000 at a hotel. That's logged as tourism. But the multi-million-dollar microchip contract they just signed, that profit goes to the manufacturing column. And the executive takes their own profit back to their home country.
Oh, I see. They don't leave a self-sustaining engine behind.
No, they don't have their own independent routes. If global trade shifts and manufacturing drops, the executives stop flying in.
And the hotels empty out overnight.
Instantly. Because the tourism didn't generate its own demand. It was entirely parasitic on the factories.
That is terrifying if you were a hotel developer in Seoul. You think you're riding a tourism wave, but you're really just gambling on semiconductor exports.
It's a house of cards. And this leads us to the real-world cost of this illusion. What happens when a country operates under this delusion for decades?
They waste so much money, like staggering amounts of public capital.
Exactly. It leads to massive resource misallocation.
Let me make this real for you listening. Picture a local politician, right? Big smile, cutting a ribbon on a brand new multi-million-dollar tourist plaza with synchronized fountains.
A classic photo op.
Right. But right behind them, literally down the street, a local factory is quietly shutting down because it couldn't get a government grant to upgrade its tech.
That is the exact tragedy this data exposes.
If tourism is just a passive byproduct, pouring taxpayer money into these tourist attraction policies as a way to fix the economy is wildly inefficient.
It's like trying to make a car drive faster by polishing the rearview mirror.
Exactly. So what is the solution recommended by Chiaka Stuyuk? What should governments actually do?
They have to fundamentally reverse their thinking. You must stimulate the core economy first. You invest in education, manufacturing, tech infrastructure. You create organic demand.
Build the engine.
You build the engine.
Yeah.
And then, once the wealth is generating naturally, you build the tourism infrastructure to catch the spillover.
Build the bucket to catch the water. Don't just hold out an empty bucket and pray for rain.
That's a perfect way to summarize it.
Now, to be fair to the academic rigor here, we should mention the unfinished challenge, right? Because O's study isn't the absolute final word on economics forever.
No, not at all. O was very clear about the limitations. He used a bivariate model.
Meaning just two variables, tour and GDP.
Right. It's a clean way to test, but it leaves a shadow over the data. The real world is messier.
Messier how? Like, what did it miss?
The biggest omission is fluctuating exchange rates.
Because if the Korean won suddenly drops in value compared to the dollar,
then Korea instantly becomes a much cheaper, highly attractive destination for American tourists.
And tourism receipts would spike wildly, but it would have absolutely nothing to do with Korea's internal GDP growth.
Exactly. It's an external shock. So O notes that future research needs a multivariable framework. You have to include exchange rates, global trade volumes, inflation in competing countries.
The true picture of globalization is basically a massively tangled web.
It is. But even with that limitation, the sledgehammer O swung completely cracked the foundation of the multiplier myth.
Absolutely. So let's recap this journey we just went on.
Let's do it.
We went in thinking tourism built the Korean miracle. We looked at the packed streets and assumed foreign cash was the engine.
But the data proved otherwise.
We walked out realizing tourism was just the confetti falling from the actual engine of exports and heavy industry.
It was a 0.19% byproduct.
So, what does this all mean for us today? It means identifying the true root of your growth is infinitely more important than chasing the shiny, inflated numbers on the surface. Tourism might be the jewel in the crown, but without a heavy iron base of industry, that crown shatters.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's not just about economics in the 90s.
No, it's entirely relevant right now, which leads me to a final provocative thought for you listening. Look around at the world right now, especially with the explosion of AI and this frantic push for digital transformation.
Oh, this is a great parallel.
Are tech companies, or maybe even your own business, pouring massive amounts of money into the modern equivalent of tourism? Are you chasing the shiny, visible byproducts of success like flashy AI features or viral marketing, while completely neglecting the boring, heavy machinery of data integrity and actual product value that generates the wealth?
Are we repeating history?
Exactly. Are we mistaking the confetti for the engine all over again? Think about it. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. Keep questioning the consensus, and we'll see you next time.